សួស្តីឆ្នាំថ្មី Welcome to Khmer Voices, where we shine a spotlight on the achievements of the Cambodian diaspora around the world. I'm your host, Vanni, aka Vanny. I hope you're enjoying the festivities of the Cambodian New Year, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to Khmer Voices. Cambodians are not monolithic, and my guest today, Ryan Samn, is a reflection of our diversity. Ryan is what we call Khmer Jen, but his lineage isn't as simple as being half Chinese and half Cambodian, I learned. In this episode, we delve into the complexities of Cambodian identity, exploring the nuances of ethnic labels and language and indigenous tribes. He also talked about his struggles with mental health and with being bullied, and how his decisions led him to a life that not only put him in danger, but also his family. He turned his life around, though. Ryan Samn is an Asian American writer, educator, and cultural practitioner. He graduated from San Francisco State University and began his teaching career as an English language instructor in Tahiti. Upon his return to the San Francisco Bay Area, Ryan took up a position at Skyline College, starting out as an instructional aide for the community college's tutoring center. Then in 2017, he became advisor to the school's student government and oversaw the logistics for over 50 active clubs on campus. And over the years, Ryan was responsible for creating and organizing some of the college's only known Southeast Asian student programming, focusing on diasporic storytelling. And today, he is the school's college recruiter, managing the outreach office and collaborating with local high schools in the Northern Peninsula. During the pandemic, Ryan took on a second position as a Cambodian culture consultant for the nonprofit organization Art Together, based out of Oakland, California. Here, Ryan helped curate and coordinate Art Together's multimedia storytelling project, Cambodian Voices in the Bay. In 2023, he became a self-published author and released Khmer Jen, Southern Chinese Diaspora in Cambodia, and it was a comparative study of the Chinese-Cambodian culture. He also published a 45-piece debut collection of poetry called I'll Be There Too. Ryan is also a husband, father of 2 boys, and he actively volunteers at his family's local Theravada Buddhist temple on the weekends. Now, I learned a lot about how diverse Cambodians and Khmers are. Did you notice? There's a difference in English, but not so in the Khmer language. Are you intrigued yet? I hope so. Enjoy this episode with Ryan. You have an interesting story just based on what I know off Instagram. But you're kind of, you're not always active on Instagram, but then when you are, you share these awesome tidbits about Cambodia, but not only Cambodia, but Southeast Asia. And you were telling me before I hit record that you're married to a Tahitian. So I'd like to know more about that. And I want to just cover so much with you, but let's start from the beginning. You are based in San Francisco?
Correct. I was born out here in San Francisco, and our family uprooted out of the city like many other Asian American families, or specifically Chinese Southeast Asian families, uprooting out of the inner city to go into some of the surrounding suburbs. Just for, there's a lot of, I'd say, violence and things that were happening in San Francisco and in Oakland, which caused a lot of folks to spread into the neighborhood, the suburban areas. So South San Francisco, San Bruno, Daly City. Mm-hmm. And so we uprooted when I was around kindergarten age. Yes.
Okay.
So my dad is Jan Katang, which is he's just Cantonese Chinese, no affiliation or ties to any Southeast Asian country. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about being Khmer Jen, I'm literally that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because a lot of Cambodians do have some Chinese in them. Like I don't know if you can tell, but I do too from both my parents' side. But we don't speak any dialect of the Chinese language.
Right.
It's strictly Cambodian, but I know we do practice some Chinese traditions. I can't tell like what's what though. I just That's why what you share on Instagram, it's so cool. Like you get to the root of it all.
Absolutely.
So your parents met in the US.
Correct.
Okay. What was it like growing up in the suburbs?
So growing up in the suburbs, we had a very American journey, I'd say. As I explained, dad being Tenkatang, so Cantonese dialect of Chinese, and then mom's side being they speak and understand the different Chinese, Southern Chinese dialects that a lot of other Cambodian families do, but grandma being both Katang and Tuchu, and then grandpa being mixed Toisan, so they spoke the different dialects, and so my mom and dad don't even speak the same dialects, so they did not teach us Chinese language. And in that time era, it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't cool, it's not about that, but assimilation was a big key card in the 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of folks saw naming your child something like Ryan versus Sopan, was like a way and a key to success.
Right.
A lot of parents at that time, I'm noticing a theme, whether folks are Chinese, Khmer, Vietnamese, not all of us, but a lot of us who, our parents had us here. If we're first generation born here or second generation, parents had in mind to give us an American first name, speak English if they could, or really push English on us. And so growing up in South San Francisco was actually difficult because my parents viewed it as a safer place away from San Francisco, away from the community. And yet, though I felt very isolated as a child, I was around other people of color.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not in like a very white setting, I'd say. But I felt bullied for being Asian. Although I had friends from, all my classmates looked different and we all got along, but there were subtle things. There was like subtle bullying, right? It was like still being called like ching chong on the basketball court or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, or
Mm-hmm.
or being asked about stereotypes that I didn't even know about yet. So being in a school where kids still would point out that you're the Asian guy in class,
Mm-hmm.
it was really hard
Mm-hmm.
in those circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at home, did you speak strictly English then?
Yeah, my parents spoke English to each other, and then we spoke English, just us and our siblings. I didn't learn the Khmer language till I went to, well, of course, hanging out with family, relatives, and being around it, and then being around it at the what. But it also back then wasn't like the quote unquote cool thing to do, to be into your culture back then.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 2000s, things like that were just emerging,
Mm-hmm.
like Asian pride and things like that. So all of a sudden, a lot of peers of mine were just starting to kind of get into that, and so was I. But yeah, as a kid, I only spoke English, and then I started learning and picking up the Khmer language in my kind of like early teens, and then I went to Cambodian language school uh, around like college time, and so there I learned how to speak, read, and write.
At your own
And
accord, or your parents sent you?
my mom suggested that if I was interested to go to the temple,
Mm-hmm.
because the temple's like what they described as like this beehive of culture that people are always going in and out. It's not just Buddhist tradition, but it's also the language. It's also our spirituality, which is vastly also different than the Buddhism. And so around the time that I was getting in a lot of trouble, she actually suggested that I check out and go to some of the temples if I'm seeking things that I'm not getting either at home or just like at the library and books or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have a brother and a sister.
Do they speak Khmer and any Cantonese?
No, we don't
Okay.
speak. Yeah, well, we don't speak to each other. I'm the one out of all the siblings. I'm the one who really went out of my way to learn the culture. I'm the eldest,
Uh-huh.
so I saw it as my duty, and then that came in handy. I was one of those aha moments, like I was right, because I'll have my brother randomly ask me about sakyon, or like tattoo tradition, and my sister will tap in and ask me about like, oh, for work I have to do this thing for Lunar New Year, can you tell me a little bit more about why we do this? So really being the culture keeper of my siblings and I really paid off, because it's been my life since that time that I felt that I was able to just start being myself and not worry about what others thought. But it's also helped my siblings and those around me to understand like our identity, culture identity.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, that's where that kind of came into
So
play.
you mentioned that you have a Tahitian wife and you also have two kids.
Yes,
Do you speak her language as well, or are you trying to? And what
I
about your
do.
kids? Do you pass that on to them too?
Absolutely. So that's a long story, Vanny. That could be a podcast episode on its own. But in a nutshell, after college graduation, I did leave San Francisco State University with a bachelor's in English education. I went and got certified to teach ESOL, so English as a second language. I got my TESOL certificate, and I looked at different places to teach English.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was obviously Cambodia. And so my grandmother heard about that. She said, "Oh, I don't know about that. I think let's go together, right? Let's go. Let's take a trip and
Mm-hmm.
let's check it out." And so we had this life-changing trip, and it was the most amazing journey I've ever been on with her, because I never stepped foot in any of our homelands, whether any Southeast Asian country that, or Asian country in general that our family stepped foot in. It's the
Mm-hmm.
first time I reconnected. So that was in 2015. When I came home, I saw that there was not a lot of like structure. Like Japan has a JET program, or Korea has several programs for teaching English and getting employed as an American. And Cambodia didn't have that. It was just more like, who do you know and where are you going to go to teach English? There's a network, but it's not as known or official.
Okay.
I tried to look into South Korea, but they were very blunt with me. They said that they did see a headshot and they did not want anyone with tattoos. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
figured out about that very quickly, that perhaps that wasn't a good fit.
Is that the case for
Um,
Japan too? I think I heard
yeah,
that
I believe
somewhere.
so. They have contracts and all that about, not showing it off and not wearing things that are very in display of your tattoos. It's just
Okay.
part of woven into their culture, right?
Yeah.
So I ended up going to French Polynesia, and I went to the island of Tahiti. I taught privately in a village. The name is Pamate, and it's part of a bigger city called Faa'a. I lived with a Tahitian chief, and
Very
I
cool.
was thank you. I was actually tutoring his five daughters and one son. They knew some English from traveling,
Uh-huh.
but the dad wanted any of the kids at home to get an edge for the job market, to know English is really good for tourism. So I taught English, and there's nothing to do at night though. So this Tahitian chief told me, "Well, come with me to this local dance group." Right, I'm doing the speech in Tahitian for the performance. So I actually joined up and was dancing with them. My dance partner was one of his nieces, and it ended up that we just hit it off. I didn't go there looking for love. I'm not like a backpack. What do they call them? Backpack bros.
Uh-huh.
I'm not one of those kind of guys. Like I went there totally clean. Like I'm looking to just do cultural exchange, teach English, get some experience. We ended up hitting it off. And when I went home, we missed each other. We stayed in touch. She came to the US to check it out. So it was then my girlfriend, but she's my wife today.
Mm-hmm.
She really didn't want to come to the US. She had it pretty set. Her and her mom ran, a small shop at the city hall for like a gift store. And her dad is he's retired now, but my father-in-law was the personal bodyguard of their country's president. So, yeah, so my
So
wife
you had to
wasn't
treat
trying
her
to,
right.
yeah, and my wife wasn't one of those folks that she wanted to like get off the rock and get to America. She really had like a whole life in Tahiti.
Yeah.
She really didn't want to leave. She had, they have healthcare, they have everything that they need there. But because we were in love, because she got pregnant, I say that like it wasn't for me. It was for me. So I got her pregnant, and I moved her here. We went through the whole visa process, the 485s, the 751. And even today, Vanny, even today, we're working on the last leg of her journey, which is her American citizenship, so her N400. So I'm very knowledgeable of the visa system because I was one of the people they call petitioner, or someone to bring their spouse over.
Yeah.
So we do speak French and
Mm.
Tahitian. Those are her languages.
Oh,
She
Trey,
does
cool.
speak English. She's gotten very good. She came not being able to order off the menu, and then now she's like fighting with me in English, right?
So hold on. You learned Tahitian as well as French for her?
Yes, I
Oh,
did.
amazing. Did you take classes in French or did you just converse with her in French?
When we first met, my French was a lot better because I was, living and teaching over in Tahiti.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, her English over time improved, and then my French got weaker. So
Mm.
now we like speak like a mix. We'll mix it around
How
for
many
the.
languages do you speak?
So American English,
Uh-huh.
French, Tahitian. I'd say I speak Khmer. I think my teachers would be proud of how well I speak, but I think like people still, when they hear me speak, they're like, "Oh my gosh, your accent is really strong." But you know what? I'm proud to say like I've gotten pretty good at holding a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I'd say I know enough Thai as well because
Mm.
our family did go through Siam. That's part of our family's journey was Siam Battambang. So Siam, former name of
Oh,
Thailand.
yeah.
Not only knowing Thai from that, but watching Lakon. So, like soap operas in Thai and then like learning. There's a lot of root words that are the same as Khmer. So me
Okay.
being the language nerd I am, the linguist I am, I'd kind of compare. For the kids, I'm trying to teach them as much vocabulary in Khmer and Thai as I can, especially when it comes to the Wat or the temple.
Uh-huh.
How do you address monks? What do you say
Yeah.
when you greet elders?
That's almost
What
like
do
a different
different
language.
Absolutely. It is a different language. It's like almost a different dialect to our own language, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I like teaching them like the different vocabulary. I'll use it with them like, oh, don't use the white tube, use the yellow, like for candle
Yeah.
or like tien, for the incense, joss sticks. So there's different things that I'll say that they're now knowing what's what.
Uh-huh.
To me, that's a win
Yeah.
because if we're using it every day, that's just ingrained in their mind. They
Exactly.
are currently 8 and 6 years old. I have two
Uh-huh.
boys. Yeah,
So do you speak Tahitian to them as well?
she does. She speaks
Okay.
Tahitian. Yeah, so she'll speak Tahitian and French,
Mm-hmm.
primarily French, and then Tahitian. They know they're in trouble. And for me, it's English, and then but then like I said, I'll work with them on things like I'll force them to say the right names of you know. Let's say dishes, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I won't call something sour soup. I'll be like, what did you want? Oh, salamachu, like
Okay.
that's what you want. And then, those kind of things, salakari, like there's different things that I'm incorporating in the household
Uh-huh.
as much as I can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's awesome. So after you taught English and came back to the US, what was your career path?
Career path has always, been in the cards for me, anything around reading, writing, language. So originally I wasn't seeking like this big career in like administration or college or anything like that. I actually was thinking to myself that I'm going to get my MA-TESOL in a master's in teaching English as a second language.
Mm-hmm.
I got into CSU Fullerton. That was around the time I got my wife Vaida pregnant with our first child. So I had to drop out of the program, which was hard for me to walk away. But I wanted to be a person who took responsibility for anything that I created, including life, right? So I knew that it was right to go and find a full-time job. And if I'm going to move her here eventually, to find healthcare for myself, her, and our child.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually walked into Skyline College because it was the closest community college to my parents' house. I asked them for a volunteer position so that I could get my certification done. And they told me, I'll do you one better. We're trying to hire graduate tutors. We can pay, like 19 an hour. I said, yes, I'd love to. So here I was working on certification, knowing I had to change plans with my master's. And I don't know, I hit it off really well with the Learning Center manager, David Reed. He ended up having me apply for the instructional aid. So that was helping like the tutoring center with their English, their ESOL. And so I did go for that job. And then in 2017, I went into a role for student life. So being college advisor for student government, student clubs. And then only last year, 2024, I took a detail position, still at the same college, but
Uh-huh.
as college recruiter. So now having all this like a plethora of knowledge, a decade's worth of knowledge about the college,
Uh-huh.
it really worked out for me to go into outreach because, you know, I can sell the college to these local high school kids that they may not know what path to take or they didn't get into their dream school. So, you know,
Mm.
I'm the person that goes into the community and tells them Skyline College is free. You know, it's a lot cheaper if you did have to pay anything than going straight to a UC, a CSU.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, come to school here. So that's what I do now. Yeah.
So what is unique about the college that you work for? Because I know that you've done a lot of things for them.
Well, at Skyline College, there is a sizable amount of Southeast Asian students that do attend the school.
Hmm.
And just me being, you know, passionate about our culture and passionate about sharing knowledge with students, I have in student life, you know, worked to do certain projects such as like a mini museum. We did one called Mekong Stories from Home, in which we featured students who are of Burmese heritage, Cham heritage, Khmer heritage, Vietnamese heritage, Thai, Hmong, Lao, and Southern Chinese. So all the Mekong countries. And we asked students to bring photos from home, if they brought any outfits with them, any cultural artifacts. And we put them all on display as this mini museum along with their photo and their written stories. So that was one big exhibition I did here at the college. I was actually very, very influenced by Center for Lao Studies. They did an exhibit called Between Two Worlds. And I actually brought my students to Sacramento on a bus to check that out. And they loved seeing these Lao refugees and had basically submitted to this mini museum or a museum, basically, California museum, their outfits, their letters, whatever they brought with them from Lao, they brought, you know, to this museum, put it on display and told their stories. And so my students wanted to do the same here. I did recently connect with one of their board members and I let them know, hey, I was totally inspired by that project you did.
Uh-huh.
And so it really, it shed a lot of light for my students as to how to tell stories and how to be proud of where they come from, you know? And
Yeah.
so shout out to Pumi from Center for Lao Studies. He is a wonderful, wonderful person. I was just connected with him at a recent event at the Lao Temple in Richmond. And so I was able to let him know, like, you know, how inspired I was by their work and how I was able to reproduce that with, again, our students here at Skyline College.
Very cool. You started the Instagram All Things Cambodian. Why
Yes.
did you start that?
So thank you. 2020, we got hit with the big pandemic, the big lockdown. And of course, no one knew, you know, what was going to happen in our lives. And so it was a good time to slow down, working from home and being with my kids and my wife. I really started to dive deep into what's out there on social media. And it kind of carried over into 2021. So prior to the lockdown, I wasn't really like, I was always taking pictures and I
Uh-huh.
was always writing notes on my phone, but I wasn't like super involved on social media and not even like Spotify, not even things like that. But because in 2021, I dove into all of it from having been, you know, lived through that whole lockdown at home and work from home, I looked up on Spotify Cambodian. And so I just wanted to see what was there. And I found this
Yeah.
podcast called Die Sparrow, and it was by Sophia O, and
Mhm.
she's based in Chicago. And she interviewed many people for her podcast. They were not all of Khmer descent, but she is Khmer Gatchen. So she did interview many people from the Khmer community. And they were amazing guests. And so, every episode I'd listen to, I'd listen at the end when they're promoting their Instagram page, and then I'd find it, and I was following. And so originally I started All Things Cambodian because I think relatives got tired of me spamming their Facebook feed with like all the pictures that I'm just reposting like that year, like all these Apsara portraits I saw were beautiful, repost these things from the temple, repost these things about Sakyon. And so I thought, okay, I think I need my own space to share photos, whatever. So I started the IG and I reached out to Sophia, and through her, I met some amazing people. One of them was Sotera Lim, who is the creator of Khmer Renaissance. Another one was Sophia Lee, who is the creator of Beyond the Mekong. She reviews like Khmer and Asian American books. And then another one was Davet, who teaches Khmer. So there's a lot of people that I connected with through that podcast. As All Things Cambodian grew, it became more of a place in which folks can tap in to connect with each other and learn and read, rather than it was the original intent, which is just me sharing things that I had photos on my camera roll of one of my older cousins, Sakyon, those kind of things. Like it just kind of evolved, I didn't plan it to be like this all-knowing person, but the educator in me, the teacher in me really, I think, shines through all those posts. Like you can feel from me that my intent, I hope my intent is really, to share and to make exchanges with people. So people will comment and say what they know too, or maybe something I was missing. I try to be receptive. If it doesn't sound rude or something like that, I try to be the most receptive me I can be and connect with them and say, yeah, that's a great point. Or, hey, that's something I missed, or hey, I didn't know about that. So I feel like it's also taught me a lot. Now, a lot of people have asked, like, why don't you use All Things Khmer? And I've let them know the name in Khmer is Krupyong Jia Khmer, which is everything is Khmer, right? That's the Khmer translation of All Things Cambodian. But I have to tell you about an amazing person who's one of my best friends, and his name is Hai Muhammad, and he is of Cham descent. So he's like me. His mom is, well, when I say like me, he's not full Cham. So his mom is Vietnamese, and then his father's Cham from Cambodia. And so being Chonchit Cham Mopi Kampuchea, they're Cham people from Cambodia. There's a different lens there. And I felt that so much when he talked about it, because that's how I felt, which is I knew in my genealogy, I know if it's been confirmed, like we've done the 23andMe and it showed up Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, but then I know in my genealogy I have those groups, but I never saw like that we intermarried with Khmer, right? So, but that doesn't take away the fact that our family still planted our feet in Cambodia and Battambang, had business there, and totally in touch with the Chinese Cambodian community. So like Hai, I had a similar feel to identifying as Cambodian, but not necessarily Khmer. And that's also respecting. For me, it's respecting that the native population is different, and that Cham people don't always call themselves Khmer. Now, in the Khmer language, they say, both Chinese and Cham in the Khmer language would say Khmer. They'd say Khmer Kat Chen or Khmer Chen for Chinese, being from Cambodia. Or in the Cham, speaking Khmer, they'd say Khmer Islam or Khmer Cham. But that doesn't mean that Cham people feel like if they know their ancestors didn't intermarry with Khmer folks, they usually will tell you, no, we're from Cambodia. So we're Cambodian. We have Cambodian, like passports or roots from Cambodia, but we are Cham people.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. I think there was a podcast that I listened to a few months ago when I was, doing some research on like what's out there, what's being said, what's being talked about. And one of the topics was, hey, should we refer to people from Cambodia as Khmer or Cambodians?
Right.
And someone had said, actually, if you refer to people from Cambodia as Cambodians, it's more inclusive because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah. I want to make a point here is that in the Khmer lens, I believe we can use only Khmer, because the word Cambodian doesn't exist in the Khmer language. We say Chonchik Khmer. We describe things. We're really good in the language at describing. We'd be like Khmer got Jen, or got got Thai, or something like that. Like we'd be able to describe it pretty clearly in the language. But my point about using, say, all things Cambodian was that I wanted to highlight that I have friends in the diaspora who, like me, are very much culturally connected to anything Cambodian, but that doesn't mean we'd claim the ethnicity Khmer. And I actually have the highest respect and love for folks that descend from the Khmer bloodline, because to me it's majestic. It's also what makes Cambodia itself. Khmer is what makes Cambodia Cambodia. But I want to make a point that not all Cambodians are Khmer and not all Khmers are Cambodian. Why I say that is that you have generations of folks that live in Campuchia Kram, southern Vietnam today. They've always lived under Vietnamese rule. They have Vietnamese passports, identification cards. They're culturally Khmer. They speak the Khmer language. They're Khmer Kram, but they're not Cambodian. They're not Cambodian nationals. Same for Thailand. You have Khmer Surin, which is an inaccurate kind of descriptor, but you have folks from Isan, which is northeast Thailand, and they're descendants from the Khmer Empire. They're ethnically Khmer, but they've never lived in Cambodia. So they would say that their nationality is Thai, their passport's Thai. Whether they identify as Khmer or not is not the question, but whether they say they're Cambodian is another thing.
Right.
And so then the flip side, it's possible to be Cambodian but not Khmer. Example, our family being Jen, Chinese, right? Being from that Chu bloodline and having roots, I'd say 4 or 5 generations in for me. My grandmother said that the first person who went to Battambang was not just her father. I thought it was my great grandpa, but actually he went with his father. And so I was like astonished to know that, right? Like, what, So then I really counted down the generations, like 4 in, but we're still saying that we're Jen. It's not a shame thing. I think it's a respect thing. Are you going to, it's like what we say, like in the hood, like, are you faking the funk? Like, are you saying that you're this, but identifying as that? I think it's just being respectful. Now, I think anyone can identify how they want. So I'm not trying to preach about what people should do. But like for my friend, he'll say he's Jam. He won't say he's Khmer. But again, he'll say Cambodian. So Cambodian, Jam. Then he has to describe what Jam is, because most people in the US don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So I think that there's 2 things at play there. And I'm happy to, address it sometimes on my IG. I don't always like getting into these debates. But I think that it's good to talk about inclusivity and but I don't think they're interchangeable, Vanny. We wouldn't say Cambodian Rouge, right? We'd say Khmer Rouge. So there's certain things that we'd say. We don't say Kingdom of Khmer in English. We say Kingdom of Cambodia. Yeah. So there's different contexts, and it's kind of a if you know situation.
Exactly. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I think it's good that you talk about this, or we talk about this, because if you were growing up in Cambodia, it's just known. Whereas here, you don't understand the nuances because you're not surrounded by it.
Right.
So I remember my mom saying like, oh, so-and-so is Jam. And I'm like, okay. But I know they're Cambodian, right? I know. Right. But I, in my mind, they're also Khmer.
Right. But absolutely. Because it's confusing when you're young, because these people are usually speaking Khmer. The language with our parents or our grandparents. And so we just automatically assume they're Cambodian or they're Khmer too, but understanding things about Southeast Asia is there's a big like overarching layer of nationalism on all these neighboring countries, right? So I think it's possible for like our family of friends who come from Laos, you could I don't know many people that say they're both, but your ethnicity could be Hmong or Mien, but then your family came from Lao. It depends on the individual how they identify. But then I'd argue like, not all people from Lao are Lao. And so it's the same for Cambodia.
Mm-hmm.
What gets tricky is that King Norodom Sihanouk had created a system in which he classified citizens and said certain citizens will have the label Khmer and certain won't. So, if you ever look it up, he said that there's Khmer Kandal, there's Khmer Lu, there's Khmer Kram, Khmer Surin. But yet, so all these different
And was
people
it a
are labeled.
hierarchy as well? Or was it
Not
just
so much
different
a hierarchy.
categories? Okay.
Different categories, yeah. Different ways we could classify who belongs to what ethnic group.
Mm-hmm.
But he did not include Cham or Chen, which is Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
or Vietnamese, right? So he said that those were very vastly different groups. I think later they went back and tried to add like Khmer Islam includes like the Chuir people and the Cham people, but that didn't really stick with Cham people because there's a lot of historical connotations to all the wars that were fought and all the conflicts that happened between folks. So I don't know if that one stuck, but he kind of lumped all the hill tribes in Khmer Lu and said that like Punong, Jarai, Kui, like they were like Khmer too, but they're like Khmer from hill tribes. And so if you ever watch documentaries though, it's interesting because the people might, it depends where they went to school, they might go along with that. But if you listen to them speaking,
Mm-hmm.
they make a distinction between being Bunong and Khmer. So that gave me a lens of, okay, even these people who are from this group called Khmer Le that we just group into one, um, it's actually not like, I don't want to say correct, but it's kind of not because it's different ethnic groups as one group, right? Then Khmer Kandal is like the central Khmer Karam we know is Cambodians or
Mm-hmm.
Khmer people that live in southern Vietnam, and Khmer Surin. There's a lot of Cambodian people or Khmer people that live in different provinces in Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
Surin is just one province. So it's weird to me that we call them Khmer Surin because that's only one province of where they all actually live. And so I've shared on All Things Cambodian like links to these kind of documentaries, and like I wanted more people in the diaspora to like listen. It's not about if I'm right or wrong. Like just listen to the data, like the facts, the stories,
Mm-hmm.
and then like have an open mind when people identify as certain labels or names,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like respect what people want, right? So it's just like getting people to know that there's something else going on there.
I like that you're highlighting the fact that we're not monolithic.
Yeah,
Like
we're
people
not.
think, people think that like Cambodians look a certain way
Right.
and talk a certain way and practice a certain tradition or cultural
Mhm.
practices. But we have, depending on where you're from in the country, we have different experiences.
Right, correct. If you watch, there's a newer YouTube channel from Cambodia called
Mm-hmm.
Road Taste.
Okay.
It's this man in his 30s. He drives a dirt bike through the roads of Cambodia
Mm-hmm.
and stops in each like different provinces to interview the locals, and they allow him to document footage about their culture and tell stories. And so he just went into Pailin, which is a province in western Cambodia next to Battambang.
Mm.
And the people there were describing that they're elders and that they know that they are. One guy called himself a hybrid. He used that word for himself, and he said he's Khmer and Kola. And Kola, the Kola people are descendants from Shan Burmese, and so they came in, or we call them, like Kola people, but their ancestors are the Tayai and the Shan from Burma, and so they came in like this time in which they were coming to mine jewels and gems, and so they themselves too like have a distinct culture. The way they build temples, it looks more Burmese. They use the Burmese writing system, which is often called Aksa Tayai.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've developed things that have added to our culture. The peacock dance and things, dishes like different mahop like mikola came from them. And so they'll tell you, Kola is not Khmer. It's different. It's a different ethnic group. They even had their own language before. The problem is that when Khmer Kahom took over, a lot of our families had to erase that identity
Mm-hmm.
because under Khmer Kahom rule, and I'm sorry to dampen the mood for that discussion, but a lot of folks had to deny their identity in order to survive. So even a lot of Khmer Gatchen families will had to hide and say, we're not Chinese, we're Khmer, or we're not this ethnic group, we're Khmer, so that they would not be taken out.
And I think it's important that you say that, because a lot of people know that people were killed, but it was they have a general understanding that it was because they were either educated or artists, and we didn't really touch on, or the general population doesn't really touch on the fact that people had to deny their cultural identity.
There was an ethnic cleansing for sure. And that's what I would say the biggest proponent of it being classified as a genocide was the ethnic cleansing piece, that they wanted to wipe out anybody who was multiracial or mixed race. And then anybody who they saw as a threat were the people who were in Cambodia, but not Khmer. So there's, I think, in the diaspora, it's not necessarily a shame, but it's literally that folks just don't even know that they may have another, ethnicity as part of their genealogy. But maybe their family doesn't know either, right? Maybe it's their grandparents who lived through that, and then they never told the parents, and then the parents just kind of had kids here and didn't know anything except being Khmer Cambodian. So it's important to highlight. But I have met folks that have said, no, I know that in my genealogy there's Bunong, or those kind of things. Or
What's
there's
Bunong?
Jedi. Bunong is one of the ethnic groups that live in. I wish I had it in front of me, but it's either Mondulkiri or Ratanakiri. So on the northeast area of Cambodia, where all the hill tribes lived.
Okay.
But I've had friends that are Jedi. So Jedi people are another hill tribe in Cambodia that they live in the mountains. They're much more indigenous. They don't worship the Buddha, so they don't have a temple culture. There's a lot of Jedi people that live in North Carolina.
Oh.
And I used to have these friends that made music on SoundClick. I don't know if y'all remember those days, but early 2000s. And so these folks are saying they're from Cambodia, but they're Jedi. And if you ever look up the culture, it's beautiful, but it's distinct from Cambodia.
How would you spell that in English so that people can look it up?
Jarai.
Okay.
And so the Jedi people, they have like oral history that their ancestors came from Malaysia on a boat, arrived in the Khmer Empire, were welcomed by one of our kings, were able to stay in the kingdom, but they worship almost like these tiki carving looking deities. They remind me of Polynesian tikis. And then they have different burial practices. They have different ways that they weave and make, indigenous things for their lifestyle. So the Jedi are very different than the Khmer, but yet, these people that came here, they would say, yeah, we're Cambodian, we're Khmer, but we're Jedi, so yeah.
That's all. This is just so fascinating. Like I could go on and on asking you all these questions. Like, how many tribes are there? Do you know in Cambodia? So
yeah.
The question is two parts. So how many tribes in Cambodia, and then how many other tribes are there that have Cambodian origin outside of Cambodia?
That's a great question. I will say on this podcast that I am passionate to learn about all this, but I'm in no way an expert. But from what I've read, there's close to 15 or 20 recognized distinct tribes that are still inhabitants of these northeastern provinces in Cambodia, Mondulkiri and Ratanakiri. I'd love to visit one day. But so the biggest part that separates most of them from the Khmer population is the fact that they have not assimilated to Theravada Buddhism. So that really sets them apart. Now there's groups like the Kui who have. In Thai they call them Sway, but in Khmer we say Kui. And people like Tony Jaa from Ong Bak, who the famous Muay Thai fighter, he's like from that ethnic group. And so he could speak Khmer and Thai. There's footage of him. But they're distinctly like it's a different group than like being Thai or Khmer,
Mm-hmm.
and yet they, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they have assimilated to Buddhism. But there's
Okay.
other groups like the Jedi or the Bunong who have not. They still worship like certain gods or goddesses that are associated with forests,
Mm-hmm.
rivers. So when we talk about animism, that's very real on that area or that side of Cambodia.
Mm. And
And so, mhm,
so they have their own traditions, each tribe,
correct.
but I'm assuming that there would be some intermarriage as well, and they would just kind of marry the two traditions together sometimes.
I I've seen that folks, especially folks who's, because the big thing is that a lot of these tribes will send their children to go work in Phnom Penh.
Mm.
You know, they want them to go work in the city and
Mm-hmm.
come back and have an education, and you know that's a very like common narrative. So I can also kind of just assume that a lot of intermarriage happens and then blending of cultures. But take a look, everybody. If you get a chance, type in Road Taste Cambodia. And on Road Taste, he will show you the different tribes, how they live today, right? So it's not like a National Geographic, this is how they lived in the 70s before the
Mm-hmm.
war. Like he's interviewing them in 2025 and like showing how they live today. And it's amazing to me because they've somehow kept their indigenous culture even after the genocide. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know how that was possible, but it just blows my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Part of that too was like my lens for writing the Khmer Gachen ethnography. And I know that you said that you have yet to kind of dive into it, but in a nutshell, I have dissected what does that look like being Chinese Cambodian, because it's not, the book is not about the Chinese who are coming, you know, after the Khmer Kahom, Khmer Rouge time era, and they're developing the land, and there's all these conflicts. I'm writing about the Southern Chinese that came in the 1800s and even
Mm-hmm.
before,
Mm-hmm.
that have assimilated, that have intermarried with Khmer families, or sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
And those five groups that came were the Cantonese, the Teochew, the Hakka, the Hokkien, and the Hainanese. And so those five groups have been in Cambodia for generations,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they've assimilated pretty well, although keeping and retaining their original culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the difference between them and, say, the newer population of Chinese coming in to develop the land in Sihanoukville or Phnom Penh or wherever else, is that
Yeah, they have
our
deeper roots.
forefathers that came, yeah, they respected traditions at least enough to get along and live for several generations. Whereas today we're seeing this influx of nationals from China that come in and they're not necessarily learning the language or assimilating. And the book wasn't written to highlight just that. The book was written more for the lens of, let's look at who these original Chinese Cambodian families were and
Mm-hmm.
what they practiced and what they brought with them. So things like hutiu or kutiu, those kind of, that's like something that the Teochew brought in with them. You know,
Did you make an Instagram post about that, or was that Khmer Renaissance?
that was
'Cause-
Khmer Renaissance.
okay,
I will
that was a
credit
really good
him
one.
all the way. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
very, very informative. And I'll often tell folks, and I always, I'll always like thank Sotera for writing that, because you're right. It was very informative and very clear. Tutu brought in these kind of noodles, and then the Khmer population made it their own. That's why
Mm-hmm.
we have Katiu Phnom Penh. It's
Mm-hmm.
distinct from the Chinese version, which is, my palate would call it, sorry, no offense to anyone, but my palate would call it goitiao, which is the old, version from China, is very plain. I
Mm-hmm.
like the version from Cambodia. I need my spices and
Spices, yeah.
herbs and things. That's just that's just my palate. But getting back to the origin of it, a lot of folks in the diaspora call it Khmer pho or
Uh-huh.
Cambodian pho. Oh,
Yeah.
we don't have pho. We have katiu. And I'll say, yeah, but if you go to a Vietnamese restaurant, there's a whole section for pho and there's a whole section for hutiu, which is their word for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, guys, we can't call a hamburger a sandwich. Like, not all sandwiches are hamburgers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, same concept, same context even, but not the same. You know, if imagine a war happened here and in 50 years we all uprooted to just Antarctica, right? And then our descendants are like, putting sandwiches together and be like, we're making burgers.
Yeah.
We'd be like, they're not burgers.
Uh-huh.
It's different. Same, but different. So that's the difference between calling like something pho versus katiu. And so that post was really important because we have to look at these lens, and understand like there's a Khmer lens and then there's like a very Cambodian American lens. And it's not to say what's right or wrong. It's not even gatekeeping. It's just stating the facts. They're different dishes. So something to think about.
I want to go back to your writing. So you've written 2 books. One is available on Amazon, so Khmer Kat Jen. I will link to that in the show notes. You also wrote a book of poetry.
I did.
Can you tell me about that?
I can. And
because I can't order unless I order from your website, right?
Yes, that's correct. So those are physical copies I have. I have a set amount that are for sale. The poetry is something that I am very proud of, but at the same time, it comes from a very vulnerable place. So I started writing poetry in like 2013. And during that time of my life, I want to get into this. It's important, I think, to touch on, which is that my mental health was declining. I really had to kind of get a grip over and come to terms with the fact that I needed to see a therapist or do something for my mental health. And so
when was this? Sorry.
Like 2012, 2013, I had this like kind of realization that I'm maybe not well. Why I say that, Vanny, is because, when I was little and being bullied, I started to develop, I think, OCD symptoms of, okay, if I am playing basketball after school alone, if I make 50 shots, maybe tomorrow I won't be bullied. And I didn't realize that that was like a symptom of OCD because I didn't know what that was. And I kind of turned that into, my older cousins, my older brothers in San Jose, they really protected me and put me on in my teenage years. So I wouldn't say like I was a full-on gang member, but being, protected by my Khmer side, I felt protected, and I felt I owed a lot of loyalty to them, And so I ran with them and even for myself, got in some trouble when I was in high school because of that and those affiliations. And, right after high school, I really had to stop when something violent happened to my parents' house. And so,
and this was, it was linked to what your activity outside school and home.
Essentially, yes, it was pretty much, it was gang violence, and it had to do with me making mistakes over, the way I talk, the way I act about certain things and getting into it with people, and they retaliate after. And so anyway, I buried that, I buried that, and I went on to college, and I was trying to be successful, but I turned that OCD into like, okay, I'm at the library. I'm not going to go home until I finish, 4 homeworks, even if they're not due till Friday. And then so I was like getting good grades, but then I didn't realize it was like possibly like OCD. And I even turned that into like how I was at the gym. Like, okay, I'm not going to go home till I do like 30 reps. And it was like, I was getting super like yoked, in my 20s. But then I at some point looked in the mirror and realized like, are these symptoms of something else?
Yeah.
And where is this kind of like coming from? And then I started to kind of dive into maybe I should see a therapist. And they did tell me, you have like pretty severe anxiety, you have pretty severe OCD, and even like, depression. So a lot of the tools that they were giving me were new, and I was ashamed at first, but then I realized that writing was an escape. And some of it were, like song lyrics or like rap lyrics, but then also poetry. And those were my favorite because they had no expectations. Like nothing had to rhyme, nothing had to make sense. It just was like whatever from inside. So from 2013 to like 2023, I just kept this collection going. And in 2021, I saw uh, Sokunteri Svai, her book Apsara New York, really inspired me because I looked at it and I realized like we can put our work out there and be proud of our identities, and we don't have to make this like anonymous poetry book in which it's speaking only to like a certain demographic or population. So I reached
Mm-hmm.
out to her and I said, Bong, I love your work, first off. But second, can you look at my work and tell me like, is this worthy of sharing with the world? And she really encouraged me. She edited, through some of my writing,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to self-publish. It was kind of scary, Vanny. I'll be honest. Like, I only saw other Khmer women doing that. I didn't see any like men writing. And then now today I know about like Boon Kong and different folks. I'm aware of like, can't put my finger on everyone's name right now, but I'm aware that there's other like poets.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm honored to be a person that's put my work into that space.
Mm-hmm.
But through that, I made so many friendships. Like the CALAA, I think I have that acronym right. They're based in Lowell, Massachusetts. It's a Cambodian American Writing Association, and so like a lot of folks I connected with in the Cambodian community of all things were writers, and it was so enlightening. So yeah, for that book, it's titled "I'll Be There Too." I really have to thank Bong Sok for encouraging me. I don't know that I would have shared it with the world if I didn't get that kind of affirmation and green light
Mm-hmm.
from someone else that I admired to say, do your thing, don't be
Mm-hmm.
afraid. And maybe there's someone out there that would really find this valuable or enjoy it.
Yeah, I'll include the link to your website for your book as well. I
Thank
just want
you.
to go back to growing up because you mentioned you struggled with bullying, and then to your cousins and your older brothers,
Yeah.
they protected you because you're part of this gang. When you were like maybe under 10, did you have anyone to look up to? Did you look up to anybody?
Well, I mean, I looked up to my dad in a sense that my dad is a great father,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave us stability. But if I'm being honest, like whenever I'd bring up to both my parents that I felt I was being bullied or manipulated at school somehow,
Mm-hmm.
the kind of response was always kind of the same. Like, well, what do you think we should do about it? Like, I don't know. I'm 10. I have no idea. I don't have an older sibling. So I was always drawn, like going into middle school, I was drawn to like finding like the older kids that would protect me
Protect you.
somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So what that looked like was like, if I got in detention because I got into it with a kid, then I'd be making friends with like some of the tougher Polynesian kids or the black kids that I thought were going to be like an older brother protector. And then I was right. I made
Mm-hmm.
a lot of friends back then that were like, having my back for certain things. But then once I hit high school and I could drive, I was finding and connecting with all the other either Khmer or Khmer Tetin or
Mm-hmm.
just in like Cambodian kids that were involved in gangs. And then I started like seeking out. It's kind of crazy. Like as a father, I wouldn't want my kids to seek that out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, what I was doing was trying to find a way to protect myself because I was like worried that if I had issues, who's going to back me up? I don't have like a lot of friends that would, do that. So I started hanging out with these folks at age as early as 15 when I started driving. I had a driver's permit
Mm-hmm.
both in San Francisco and in San Jose. And but then I'd find like folks that I'm like also related to somehow, like I would find out who their grandparents were, or they'd find out who my grandma was, and then we'd find out we're from the same family, like the Leung family, those kind of things. And so it was family. But then
Mm-hmm.
I would only roll with, I wouldn't roll with any other Asian gangs, only Cambodian.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course trying to date and stuff as a Asian teenager in Northern California, it's risky when there's a lot of like gang wars with the norteños and different people. So I had to like watch who I dated even, right? Because it got sticky about who was affiliated with who, you know?
Hmm.
And yeah, so San Francisco, San Jose, a lot of these folks, they were the ones who they showed me, you know, what I'd say. They showed me the game. They
Mm-hmm.
taught me and showed me what I need to understand about that life. And so I just kind of took it with me. But now I chop it down to this is family. A lot of them literally are my family. A
Okay.
lot of them are not. But I still keep in touch. I still see folks. I still pay respect. You know, if there's a big event like funeral, wedding, I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I won't say which affiliations are mine, just out of, you know, respect for folks. But yeah, it's pretty much the Cambodian folks up here in Northern
Mm-hmm.
California that I
And
know
it
them.
and you changed our ways after somebody had attacked your parents' home.
They essentially shot up our house.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, that is
yeah. So
scary.
and I don't mind saying because people knew back then. This is such an old story, so much has passed. But it's a Vietnamese gang that I had issues with, and they came and they messed up the front of our house.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
and so we woke up to all that, you know, sound and damage, and so that's how I got into learning about Tahiti. Was my dad being a, you know, like Chinese American person who grew up in San Francisco. He liked to play music, so he's already like friends with these hula groups and people that did Tahitian drumming and Polynesian culture. So after this happened with our house, my parents gave me this ultimatum. I was like 17, and they
Mm-hmm.
said, "You should probably switch schools. You should get a job. Stop hanging out with people that you shouldn't. And also, you're going to go learn like Tahitian drumming with your dad." So, yeah, age 18, I started getting into all the Tahitian cultural stuff. And that's why I chose Tahiti to teach
Mm-hmm.
English.
It was somewhat
But
familiar to you.
it was. But you touch on something important because I wasn't going to go into that part of my life, but I feel like it's a missing piece, which is the reason I got into ESOL was because I tried to figure out in my, you know, in my head as a young man, I knew folks from my relatives, friends, older cousins, older brothers in the gang life that were being deported back to Cambodia. And I said, how do we stop this? Like other than the nonprofits that step in and they organize the protests at
Mm-hmm.
ICE and things like that. Other than that, and those are great. Those are like what we need.
Mm.
But how do we stop it earlier?
Yeah.
And I realized that folks were not getting their national what is that called? They were not going for their green card. They were not getting naturalized.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the root causes in our own community, and I said, there was a major flaw in the American system, not just justice system, but educational system, which is, you know, the U.S. did not tell Khmer refugees, Cambodian refugees, Southeast Asian refugees to go through this naturalization process after they have been here for
A certain amount of
quite a
time.
while.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and I said, it's English. It's English education. It wasn't math. It was English. And so that's what got me into ESOL was that heart for how can I stop other families from being deported? How can I stop that from happening in the future?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my big brothers, he's on the list to basically be sent back to Sokmai. And then I really took that to heart and I said, I'm going to make my major in college ESOL because
Mm-hmm.
I want to help immigrants and refugees on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I became ESOL just because of the Cambodian community. I became an ESOL person. Not many people know that. He knows that. My older brother knows that. But not many people know about that, why I
Mm-hmm.
chose that. Some
Okay.
people some people look down on me. They're like, how come you don't go into tech or something that you can make more money?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose education? You know, and I know they don't mean it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I look at it, I'm like, there's a reason I went into education, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I did look at it like I did have an internship in San Francisco for nonprofit work. And I saw it as very useful, very helpful. It's what our community always needs. But I also saw that it's very limited. Nonprofits, they'll only have room for, X amount of employees or people on their team. And I thought, gosh, am I always going to have to compete for that spot? And then if we don't have funding, I have to go find another nonprofit to work for. So I thought to myself, working in the education system would be a lot more stable for me and make greater impact of meeting more immigrants and refugees. So essentially, immigrants and refugees are finding nonprofits because they don't have the resources in their community.
Yeah.
So what if I was the guy in the community?
So how are you doing that now?
I had this awesome opportunity to work with CERI, which is Center for Empowering Refugees and Immigrants in Oakland, California. It was right after the pandemic. I took a part-time job of doing remote work for them for this project called Cambodian Voices in the Bay. It actually wasn't CERI. It was CERI. One of the members left and made a nonprofit called Art Together. And so they tagged me in. One of my relatives tagged me in this project space, and I actually got brought on board to help them with their as a Khmer cultural consultant, essentially for this project. And I loved it, absolutely loved it. But I still see that with the nonprofit world, it's also who you know, and for the educational world, it's less about who you know, but what your CV or your resume looks like. And so that to me was a little bit more sustainable, in the long run, because now I have a family. I can't necessarily jump to the nonprofit world not knowing if I have all the benefits that I need for me, my wife, my kids, that kind of thing. And so I still feel like I have a good relationship there with understanding and loving the Asian American nonprofits or nonprofits that do a lot of community work. I have total respect for them. But I like to be kind of just this helping hand. I don't like to take the spotlight.
All right. Okay.
I'd rather be, this person who's still working in the college system and somehow making an impact. And then if I can help any nonprofit, I will,
Yeah. You know what? We went over the time, but I do have a few more questions.
Sure.
Let's do 3 more. So,
okay.
Who inspires you now?
That's a great question. I have a lot of people in our community that I want to kind of highlight and mention. One is David. So he is the Khmer language instructor that I just took Khmer classes with. My God, that teacher of mine is not only knowledgeable in our language, but in our culture. Just all the conversations I've had, it's just amazing to me, all the wealth of knowledge that person has. Then there's other younger folks in Cambodian Instagram world that I'm inspired by them because they also their knowledge just shines through the iPhone screen, and I'm just blown away. One of them, his name's Chauncey. He takes care of the page called Seha Media, but that guy, he remembers every Khmer song. I'll send him a random clip of a random song, and like Shazam, he knows the artist and the name. It's amazing.
Saha Media. Okay. I'm going to email you about that because I don't think I follow him.
Sure. Absolutely. There's other folks I've made a friendship with her over time, but we're pretty much like family, same roots and same kind of cultural background, which is the Donut Princess, Mei Li Tao.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
She is someone I look up to because she doesn't stop the narrative of telling, the importance of storytelling and telling everybody about why things are the way they are. Why are certain Chinese traditions a part of Cambodian culture and vice versa. And that's been a big help for the book, and then there's one person I have yet to meet him in person, but I did kind of get to speak to him a little bit through Sotera, and that's Bore Chow. He runs the page Community, and he'll raise funds for Cambodian American students in Long Beach to get a scholarship, like scholarships that they may not have had access to. And he does that by creating swag and merchandise that we all like his designs, and we all like have bought stuff. And he's shown videos of him giving like a check to a Cambodian American senior who may not have otherwise found a scholarship to go to college. And so that guy, other than liking his music, I look up to him and I'm inspired by his community work. Like, that's just organic. He didn't need a nonprofit. He didn't need a college to work at to do all that. Like, he's just doing it on his
Very
own.
entrepreneurial.
So, absolutely. Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self? So your 16-year-old self, you were in trouble. You weren't headed the right direction. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self now?
Two things. One is I would have told myself to never be ashamed of who I am. My culture, my identity, it was something that I should have always safeguarded and never let be a point of pain, but instead turn that into a gemstone in my life and honor it and treasure it. The second thing, as I don't mean to I'm not trying to bring in any toxic masculinity traits or anything, but I will say as a young man, I would have liked to hear from someone older to tell me to go work out. Like, working out solved all my issues, and I would have told myself to get started earlier because, you don't have someone to talk to. You have the gym, you have your headphones, you get swole, and then your confidence goes up because you look good,
and you've got the endorphins after as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would have wanted to start way earlier. So I feel like I was in my prime and I only understood it at like age 18. And then
you didn't get that playing basketball?
No, not at all. Not at all. I didn't. Yeah. Cause I was always like afraid of who would walk up and, start some stuff with me.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the gym, like going at age 18 all the way through, like I was in my prime at 25, I was, taking supplements, and I was like the swollest I ever was. So I would have wanted to start way earlier. And, that would have been my advice to me as a young man.
Yeah. I mean, advice to your current self as well, right? Like, I keep telling myself I need to keep at it because we lose muscle.
Like cardio, and then our bodies, me, I'm going to be reaching my 40s in a few years. Like, I still want to be able to chase the ball with my kids and, ride bikes and stuff. So, I don't want to lose that. Right. And so I think I have to really push myself, like, get back into it,
So what do you plan to do in, the next 5 years? More books coming out anytime soon?
Yes, absolutely. It's the first time I'm going to be saying it on any kind of live recording, but I'm happy to do it here. Going to be releasing a third work that's still in progress. It's titled Playing with Fire. And it's a bunch of short stories specifically about black magic. So, things I've dealt with and seen in my family, in my life, even just in the hood, like knowing these kind of stories. I've gotten some permission from folks that have gone through things to kind of write about it. As long as I change the name and the situation, they were like, you can tell my story. I just don't want my name out there. And so I'm trying to put together this collection of short stories. Because it's almost like our community kind of treats it like a joke, like, ooh, Khmer black magic, but it's a very real thing. We're very superstitious in terms of wearing, the amulets to the sakyon, and, every family has a different way of seeing it. Some families stray away from it because it's like their mom or grandma did it and then they're like freaked out by it. But a lot of folks will get some kind of blessing done for their house, their car, their baby, even their, down to the wedding traditions. A lot of it is not just folk tradition, but superstitious. And so, I'm working on that collection of short stories. There's 12 of them.
Very cool.
But I'll be releasing more information about it soon.
Okay. So no estimated release date yet?
No, not yet. I haven't found an editor. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to end off with this question I always ask at the end. What's one or two things that you want listeners to take away from your story?
I want listeners to take away from my story that I think we have to be patient with ourselves. I don't want it to seem so cliche when I say this, but we don't always know why we went through something, and then like 10 years later we'll find out the reason. And so that's been my reality in almost everything I talk to you about. I didn't know why something bad happened to me, but 5, 10 years later down the road, I was like, oh, that's why I needed to go in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing I'd say would be to be proud of who we are. Like, don't be afraid. I've had people say to me, um, you're not really Chinese because you guys, like, you speak Khmer and like you guys go to the temple. Like, that's not Chinese. I'd be like, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm straight up Chinese. And then I've had like Khmer people also say like, but you are Chinese. You're not Khmer. Like, this and that. It's like, guys, there can be an existence of both cultures.
Right.
Like there's a lot of people, famous people, in fact, that are Chinese Cambodian and embrace both cultures. And so I really encourage you to embrace it. Don't be ashamed of either side. Identify how you want, but don't be ashamed of your family and who you are. Be proud of who you are and take that with you in life.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
One last question, actually.
Sure.
What was it? I can't remember.
About Tahiti.
Oh, that's right. Yes, about your podcast.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. What is it? What is it called? In case people want to check it out as well.
I'll give you a link, but it's called Tereva Neyao. In Tahitian, it means being on this journey. That's basically it's a journey that you're on. And it started with my wife and I telling our story of how we met and how she came to the U.S. And then we started interviewing other Tahitians and even people from the U.S. who married a person from Tahiti or had children with someone from Tahiti to talk about what that looks like. Their diaspora is a lot smaller than the Samoan and Tongan population as Polynesians in the U.S., but that doesn't mean that their stories are any less great. What it means is that we have more work to do to help preserve those stories because there are actual Tahitian people living in the United States, but they're just not as visible because of numbers. And so what my wife and I wanted to do with that podcast is give other Tahitian people living in the States a chance to share their experience having immigrated here, and then other U.S. or American spouses to also share what their experience was like, similar to mine, which is meeting someone in Tahiti or meeting someone Tahitian and learning how to be a good in-law or baby daddy, baby mama, whatever you want to call partner, right? Because sometimes when you're not part of the Polynesian culture, assimilating into it through marriage is difficult. It's my wife and I. We love each other's cultures, but sometimes we clash. We have a lot of different ideas about how to go about conflict, how to go about friendship. There's just like a lot of cultural differences, and so we're navigating that. And it's a beautiful journey. But we thought to share that with the world because there were other couples that had some similar dynamics.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. All right, I'll check it out as well. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation. Everybody go follow his Instagram. You don't post like every single day like other people do, but when you do post, it is highly impactful. So I definitely appreciate that.
Som akun charan, Bang Vani. Thank you so much. I just want to thank you. Thank you for the time, and it's an honor. I'm honored to be in the guest list of people that you've had. I got a chance to listen to a whole bunch of the interviews and just really admire all the guests that have been on the show already. So again, akun charan, thank you.
Be proud of who you are. Be proud of your cultural heritage. I think we're in an era now where we're starting to understand that the majority of what we saw and are seeing was through the white lens. I'm learning more and more how my ideas of who we are and other people of color were a projection of white dominance. For example, despite Ryan attending a minority-dominated school, he was still bullied because he was the only Asian there. He's bullied for being Asian. Have you ever asked where and how did racial stereotypes start. I'm not sure if I'm adequately explaining this. I hope I am. Feel free to get in touch with me, whether it's through social media or by email if you'd like me to expand on it. In my teens and even my early 20s, I was ashamed of being Cambodian. But now in my 40s, I'm prouder than ever, and I want to pass that pride on to my kids. I see the cultural pride in the younger generations, and it makes my heart sing. I just wish I had felt the same when I was younger. And as Ryan says, things happen for a reason. As I get older, I'm accepting that more. This can be applied to many aspects of life. I mean, that's not to say, for example, in your professional life that you give up what you were trying to go for after failing. But what I'm trying to say is there's a reason why you failed. Usually it's a lesson. Other times it's a closed door that's redirecting you to the right one. Great reminders, Ryan. Thank you for sharing your inspirational story, and thank you for your contributions in teaching and celebrating our history, heritage, and culture. So, Aknia, did you learn a thing or two? If you'd like to learn more about the Khmer Gen history, you can get Ryan's book from Amazon, and I have linked it in the show notes. Unfortunately, I'm still not finished reading Khmer Gen. My kids insist on reading it with me, and that has slowed me down tremendously. I'm about halfway through, and so far it's been enlightening to learn how the Chinese that immigrated to Cambodia generations ago maintained their traditions and assimilated with the Khmers. Now, if you know someone who'd enjoy this episode, be sure to share it with them. And don't forget to give Khmer Voices a 5-star rating if you haven't yet. If you've already done so, sama akun traun. And thank you for listening. In 2 weeks, we'll be back with an episode where I interview co-founder of a startup that is changing the travel accommodation space for families. Such cool stuff Askon Khmer are doing, right? See you again in a couple weeks.